Greetings, dear CMC friends. We are so happy to welcome you here to our weekly Sunday sit, which we have come to call our Sacred Sunday Pause. And my name is Jessica. My pronouns are she, her, and I am so pleased to get to host this morning. So for me here on the East Coast, it is 10:30 Eastern. And I know that we have many members of this Sangha from different parts of the country. So I am going to share a little bit of an overview about what our session looks like. And in the meantime, feel welcome to take a moment to just tap into the chat where you are zooming in from. So, where your mini retreat for today is. And so, as those responses come in, I will share what is to come. So, in a couple of moments, our guiding teacher, Bart Van Melik, is going to lead us in a meditation. So, that is typically about 25 minutes. We close that at 11 o'clock Eastern. And then we always take a moment as a Sangha to reflect on Dāna, the Pali word for generosity. And as Bart will share, generosity is our theme for today as we dive into the Pāramīs over the next several weeks. After the Dāna share, we will go into Bart's Dharma teaching for the day. And so throughout our time together, if you have questions, if you have reflections that you'd like to share with our community, you can put them in the chat at any time. And at about 11:45 Eastern Time, I will start to read through those and offer some of them up to Bart for his response. And at noon, we have a special practice of then transitioning into breakout rooms. So if you have 15 additional minutes to be in practice, then we will invite you into a breakout room with about 4 members of the Sangha. And as we continue to sort of build our practice of connecting with each other in that particular way, just a couple guidelines to share. The first one is to collectively be mindful of the fact that everybody might choose to communicate in different sorts of ways. So if you'd like to share things verbally, you're welcome to do that. If you'd prefer to type into the chat, that is okay too. And also just make sure that we are all moving in and moving back as the conversation unfolds. So, what I mean by that is we want everyone to have an opportunity to share from their perspective, but we also want to make sure that we are together, ensuring that there is time and space for everyone else in the group to also get to share their reflections. So we consider this one of our favorite little simple practices in deep listening that we can offer each other as a form of generosity. And so it's always fun to see where we have folks tuning in from. So at this point, we have almost 100 people online with us, and I'll just scroll through and share a couple of places that your fellow Sangha members are tuning in from. So we have a friend, Fred, in Medford, Oregon. We have Jane in New Paltz, upstate, Bridget in Arizona, dear Veronica in Germany, Patty in the northeast corner of Connecticut, called the Quiet Corner, and that sounds delightful. George in Edinburgh. We have Bettina in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have a friend, Erin, in Colorado. Philomena's in France. And many folks on the Upper West Side, which is the hometown of the CMC before we went virtual. So, welcoming you all. And before I pass things over to Dear Bart, we have one very special ritual, which is that we always begin our Sundays with a community wave. So if you are on camera, maybe lean in just a little bit and give a warm wave and a smile to everybody who's here with you. And no worries if you're on video, you see all of the waves. If you're not, I will let you know that there are many smiling faces giving you a warm welcome into our community today. And dear Bart,
Hmm.
so happy to be back here on
Yeah,
Zoom with you.
thank you, Jessica, and thanks everyone for being here. I saw that Aaron from Colorado was from a town called Loveland. That's a cool name for a town, right? Loveland. Oh, and I'm actually looking forward because I feel this excitement for a new theme. And Jessica mentioned it already in the Pali language. It's called the Pāramīs. And it said that the Buddha reflected on some qualities that he really trained well for him to live this life of awakening. And he came up with 10 qualities. And the first human quality is called generosity. And often the Buddha started teaching right there. And so in this sacred Sunday pause, the invitation is to also reflect on what are the results or the fruits of being generous. And so every week we'll look at one of these perfections or human qualities. And maybe by June, you never know, you're fully awakened. You never know. And so, as Jessica was saying, we're starting with a guided meditation. And just take a moment to see how your body is. Does it feel helpful to stretch it a little bit or hydrate it? The Buddha said, what's given is well rescued. What's given is well rescued. And please know that in this very moment, you are giving. You're giving your presence to this community, to yourself. And perhaps starting with an aspiration. What would you like to give yourself these 90 minutes of practice? If you're comfortable, you could close your eyes or keep a soft gaze. You need to start with a pause. It's as if you come home to knowing you are mindful. And know that you are not practicing alone right now. Be feeling into the idea that you're practicing in community. What if you were to receive all the sensations of the body? Just like the blossom in New York right now is receiving sunlight. Receive. Pause into awareness, receiving body sensations, pressure, coolness, tingling. Maybe it's possible to allow these sensations to unfold. Pause, receive, allow. It's as if you're allowing your body to speak to you without interference. And there might be a natural relaxation, or you can help the body by softening, settling back. We also have this sense organ of mind, sensitive to mental activity. Taking a moment to receive thinking, planning, images. See if you can allow all these mental impressions to unfold by themselves. Pause, receive, allow. As if you're listening to a dear friend without interference, being a friend to your mind. And in the midst of all this mental activity, the body is gently breathing. Breathing in, I receive. Breathing out, I allow. Receiving an inhale, allowing an exhale. Shifting into some minutes of communal stillness. Take your time. You're on retreat. Nothing to manage, nothing to achieve, nothing to perform. Cultivating this kind awareness that knows. It simply knows. Inhale, receive. Exhale, allow. In a few moments, you'll hear the bell. You're just taking a moment to notice how you are right now. What's it like to be human right now? Maybe there's a moment of receiving and allowing these human experiences unfolding moment by moment, which might feel as a great gift to yourself. What's it like to realize you're participating in community right now, sharing your presence? May the goodness of our meditation be shared with all beings.
Thank you, dear Bart, for that wonderful practice. As I mentioned at the beginning, we always take a couple of minutes to reflect together on Dāna, the Pali word for generosity. Um, and I will share a couple of things with you all today. Um, but first, what I wanted to offer was just a little bit of gratitude to you all for the generosity that you've offered me over the last couple of weeks. So many of you know that I have been navigating a very difficult personal loss. And it's been truly, truly wonderful, whether it was in the form of comments in the chat over these few weeks or emails, in some cases, a Venmo from people that want to just offer generosity to the children of my dear friend who passed away a couple of weeks ago. It has been a balm. It has truly, truly been medicine to feel seen and considered in this way. And I wanted to give a particular thank you and shout out to Bart and to Henry, our dear volunteer, who last week braved the adventures of being in person at New York Insight without me. So Henry was scheduled to be our greeter at the door. He is doing that very generously in addition to many other things. But it was a very last minute surprise that we also, well, it was Bart. Who can say no to Bart? Bart very kindly invited Henry to give the Dāna talk. And you all know how that went. He was hilarious and terrific. And it also was incredibly helpful for me to have a little bit more time with my son, with my family, and also with our neighbors next door. So I think I have been reflecting a lot myself on how this kind of cycle of generosity is so powerful, right? That when folks have been generous with me, first of all, it has been medicine for my spirit, but it has also meant that I've had more capacity to be generous in other ways with the people around me. So I am really grateful for that. And I talk a lot in the other part of my work as the co-founder of Care Lab Collective, which is a community for caregivers of neurodivergent and disabled kids. I talk a lot about the fact that the word caregiver and caretaker mean the same thing. And when you think about what a caretaker is or a caregiver, it is someone that is giving care. But there's so rarely awareness of the fact that to care give well, we also have to take care personally, but also receive care from our community. So, all of those things have been swirling in mind for me over the last couple of weeks, but I just wanted to expressly name my gratitude for your generosity. And as you know, I also will always peruse my bookshelf for something to offer that kind of helps me reflect on what generosity means to me. And so I've found a poem that I love, and perhaps some of you are familiar with it. It's by a poet named Danusha Lamaris, who is Barbadian and Dutch. She was the poet laureate of Santa Cruz, California, a couple of years ago. She lives in Northern California. And she wrote a beautiful poem called Small Kindnesses. So I will read that to you as I close. So her poem goes like this. Small kindnesses. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by, or how strangers still say bless you when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we're saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them and for them to smile back, for the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat. And so, with that, I will share some information about various ways to offer generosity to CMC, including coming to some of our upcoming events, the online ones. I will share some of our incoming or in-person events that are coming up, and noting that we have a day-long retreat in June. So I will share all of that information, but you are all always welcome to visit the program calendar to see what we have in store. And last but not least, if you, as a member of the Sangha, would like to share a Dāna talk of your own, if you encounter a poem, if you write something, if you read something, if you have a story that's really kind of given you one of those aha moments of recognizing why generosity is such a powerful practice for you and for all of us, send me an email. So we are really excited to start broadening who gets to share these reflections with our community because there is so much power in us telling these stories to each other.
Mm.
So thank you all. And dear Bart, looking forward to your teaching.
Well, thank you for your teaching, Jessica. And again, just wanted to start by saying that um, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm also grateful that you shared it with us again. Sometimes we might not want to share our losses in community, but there's something really powerful about being heard by other people, especially when it's difficult. And I would really love to hear also your wise voices on this teaching of giving and sharing. What's given is well rescued, the Buddha said. And we always call it Dāna talk, but mostly Jessica does in the middle of the guided meditation and the Dharma talk. And I kind of looked up the word, what it really means, because we always say the Pali word for generosity, right? Its little meaning is the act of giving. So the Buddha is pointing to something that is active. And in this talk, what I would love to explore with you is what are the results? What's, if you will, the karmic result of giving and sharing? The Buddha was also really blunt in his teachings. I've looked over so many places how he taught about generosity. And he also said this, practitioners, I feel like he did it with this voice, practitioners, overcome the taint of greed and practice giving. Overcome the taint of greed and practice giving. And I almost see him like maybe even point a finger at us. I wonder if that would be a good slogan for like a fundraising campaign. I'm not sure. But that's what I love about the Buddha. He always keeps it real and points also where the difficulty is. So in our talk, we'll also explore when is giving hard. And I'll close with I found a teaching where the Buddha is talking about 5 key elements that make a gift given at the right time by what the Buddha called a person of integrity. And so, as we mentioned, generosity is often the foundation from which the Buddha started teaching. And we're starting a 10-week theme of a teaching called the 10 perfections or 10 Pāramīs. And Pāramīs is another Pali word that kind of means a human quality that has a lot of merit that can be trained. And just want to give you the list. You don't have to remember it, but just to give you a sense of what we'll be exploring in April, May, and early June. So the first one is generosity. The second one is virtue, followed by renunciation or letting go, wisdom, effort, patience, honesty, determination, loving kindness, and equanimity. It's really quite a list. Those were the human qualities as the Buddha reflected on it, were qualities he's really been spending a lot of time training and perfecting. And we'll also have a variety of voices. Next week, Vera Ranchagul will be teaching us on virtue, and then on May 10th, we'll have a guest appearance by Joseph Goldstein. And so I really hope you can kind of stay for the whole ride, the whole theme. And so with generosity, the first thing that came to my mind as I was reflecting on it was, how committed am I to practicing giving? And maybe you want to pause too for a moment. Is it something that you deliberately practice? And when I looked over the teachings of the Buddha, I noticed, on the one hand, a sense of he usually talks a lot about the delight of generosity. but he also had like a seriousness about being committed to train ourselves in giving and sharing. He said that if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of stinginess overcome their minds. And even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared, if there were someone to receive their gift. And he closes by saying, but because beings don't know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given. And then the stain of stinginess overcomes their mind. And there's a lot in that teaching, but for me, the thing that I want to take out is, do I really know the results of giving and sharing? Do you feel like you have a willingness to explore that more, to learn more about it? So that's what in these next 10 weeks we'll explore, is this willingness to keep training a specific aspect the Buddha called so worthy of training, perfecting. And when I thought about generosity, I was thinking about, in many cases, it happens already in early childhood. My favorite kindergarten teaching is sharing is caring. And I share this great love for stand-up comedy, also with Jessica. And I recently found, not so much, it's not meant as comedy, but it's a show and it's created in Australia. And it's called You Cannot Ask That. And it's a show where people are kind of filmed. You only see them and they share something in common. Like once there was a group of people who were terminally ill, a group of people who were all immigrants in Australia. And then really like questions that are kind of almost where you're like, oh my God, I would never dare to ask the question. And then there was one group of people with people who had just turned over 100. I think in English it's called sanitarians. I might butcher that word, but you know what I mean, right? And then the last question they got was, so what's the point of this human life? You've been around for more than 100 years. And there was one man, and in my opinion, he was quite grumpy. And he goes, perhaps, and he's like with this face, perhaps to make other people happy with the question mark. And that made me think like, okay, the meaning of our infinite life, I mean, our finite life in this infinite universe, maybe it's the meaning is it to be of meaning for other people, for other creatures. Maybe it is these little acts of kindness. And in order to be of meaning, or even to make other people happy, the key element in it is generosity. Kind of similar to Jessica's poem that she read. I felt this sense of generosity when I was on the Q train this week. And then a mother came in with a carriage with two babies and another younger woman that I made her the older daughter, but I don't know. And all of a sudden, both of them were wiping the face off one baby with the tissue. And I was like, generosity right there. And there's such beauty in recognizing it, not just when you give or receive, but also when you see it happening among other beings. Generosity both benefits the donor and the recipient. And I know that Jessica is not the only person who's grieving right now. I know other people in our community are grieving as well. And I'm grieving a friend too, whom I've talked about many times, um, whom I met as a unhoused person on the beach of Coney Island. And I've been with him many, many times for over 3 years. But a year and a half ago, he went missing. And just the last few weeks, I actually started to refer to him in the past tense instead of in the present. And for some reason, that gives me more comfort in a strange way. He was the most generous person I've ever met in my life. And so he was a person who ended up homeless, unhoused on a beach in Coney Island in New York City. And he wanted to be there because he called the sea his home. And he didn't have a tent. And he gave himself an assignment to always what he called deglass the beach. That was his gift to the community. And all the officials, police, and the people who took care of the park allowed a seat to be there. And he was a devout Muslim. And often he would read the Quran to me, and he would always start with his favorite line. It goes like this: a man asked the messenger of Allah, which act in Islam is the best? And the messenger said, to give food to other people and to greet everyone, whether you know them or not. Like, wow, it's so simple. The highest act of Islam. And he always said that line. How you say that? He quoted it before we would have our lunch together. And he would always share with seagulls and pigeons and even other people who come. And I remember one day that I want to share with you. I came to him, this was in January, and it was a January 2 years ago where it was cold, but not as cold as our previous winter. But often the snow would refreeze a little bit again. So it was really slippery. And he only had a faint fire going on, and he was hunkering down. And I was just to meet him and maybe go swim for just maybe 5 minutes. And the first thing he said, Bart, I haven't eaten in a while, but I'm grateful that my stomach feels tight because then I don't crave more food because it's almost too cold to eat. All the balls around him are frozen. But then instead of complaining, he started talking to me about all the donations he had received in the last 24 hours. And he started by saying, do you see that fire? I wasn't able to start one last night because my lighter wasn't working. But Andre came, and I know Andre well too. He's a Ukrainian man who lives in that area with two big Belgian shepherds, and he has a big Zippo. So he said, Andre gave me fire. And then he said, before you came, I went to the bathroom, and there's one public bathroom there that's always open year round. And he said, I could use soap and running unfrozen water. It made me feel human again, he said. And then he said, literally 5 minutes before you came, I got this donation of these three turtleneck sweaters. And guess what? I said, I don't know. The white one is yours, Bart. So I'm here, with a man who's completely frozen, hungry, and he wants to give me his white turtleneck that he just got. He said, oh, it'll make you feel even warmer when you come out of the ocean. And he had a smile on his face. And I go, and I shouldn't have, but I did. He says, I go, are you sure? And he frowned. He said, you don't have to ask me that question, man, when I give you something. It's for you. And I gladly accepted. And then I remember once he goes, do you talk about generosity with your community? And I said, yeah, often. So then he says, the next time you talk about generosity, teach your community this. So he sat on the teacher's kind of seat. He said, generosity is allowance. That's how he started. And I remember thinking, allowance? And he goes, hold on. So my kids are grown now, but when I was raising them, we would give them allowance. But also, when they started to become teenagers, and maybe they missed their curfew, they came home too late. Instead of immediately punishing them, he said, I would also allow for their mistakes. Generosity is allowance. And then he said, I think one of the most generous things you can do is to let someone be themselves. And I remember thinking generosity is allowance that really connects well with one of my favorite meditation instructions that I just shared when we started. To allow, even just whispering to yourself, to allow. Sometimes in meditation, it gives me a sense of dropping something, releasing something. It's as if you allow things to unfold. You just pause for a moment right now and see if you can receive sounds. Pause and receive. What if you were to add allow, allowing the sounds, like the sounds of his voice, to appear and to vanish? I have two pieces of homework for you this week. This is the first. In your meditation, or even in interacting with people, or in your walking, or pausing and really looking at the blossom, pause, receive, and allow. That instruction, those three words, as an inner instruction to yourself, as a gift to yourself. The Buddha was also asked by lay people like us, how would you describe someone who has really perfected this first parami, this first perfection, human quality? And he said, there's a practitioner just like you with their awareness cleansed of the stain of stinginess, who lives at home and is freely generous, open-handed, delights in being generous, and is very responsive to requests from others, and delights in giving alms to monastics. So this is how he described a layperson in ancient India. What I get from that description is a sense of freedom, free from that stain of stinginess, free from possessiveness or the fear of not having enough. If you reflect, have you ever experienced that in your sharing? When you felt that delight, open-handedness, or really feeling that you're responsive to someone? As if you right now try to feel into what are the results of giving and sharing. Maybe the result is that you make others happy or feel contented about what you've done. Here comes the second homework for this week. And that's the last one, I promise. It's another meditation the Buddha suggested. He suggested it to do it when you feel like you're a little established. So I would suggest doing it at the end of your meditation. I'll first say his words. He said, at any time a meditator reminds themselves of their generosity, then their mind is not overwhelmed by wanting, by aversion or confusion. So every time you actively recall an act of generosity, whatever it may be, check if that's true for you. If your mind is free from these intense challenges of greed, hatred, and confusion. When I do it in the evenings before I go to bed, it usually gets triggered as a sense of feeling grateful. Grateful that I did it or that I was able to do whatever I'm grateful for, whatever I was generous with. So giving up is a direct path to liberation, to a free mind, even if you're not meditating. But then in a moment when you feel more or less free, then giving becomes almost second nature, like natural. Of course, here I hold the door for you. Of course, I'm willing to listen right now. What we do for others, we also do for ourselves. And it always makes me think of the word in English, forgive. When we forgive, we so benefit also ourselves. So what's given is well rescued. And the Buddha also understood that when he wanted to kind of preserve, if you will, his teachings and the community around him, they needed to be rescued by generosity. And so if you look at the guidelines for monastics, for example, they're not allowed to handle money. And it's also forbidden for them to ask money for teaching. The Buddha said that the Dharma, the teachings, should be given as a gift, never for any material gain. And then he founded this whole system that's still so active in a lot of South Asian countries, but throughout the world, where monastics are being supported by lay people by giving them food and medicine and clothing and shelter. And in return, they teach these teachings. The circle of generosity, as Jessica was saying, is one of receiving and sharing. And my friend Asit would often say, don't try to break that cycle. And I'm so grateful for how CMC is run. It's not operated by monastics, but we hold that same tradition. We honor it. And almost in 2 weeks from now, I've been the guiding teacher of this community for 5 years. And Jessica is executive director for 2 years. It's major. And we could not have done all this without the generosity of those before us. The founding teacher and executive director and all the executive directors that followed. And what I've learned from the founders, from Ellen and Susanna, is always make generosity the pillar of your community. And your presence right now and your donating of time and financial means is what keeps CMC running. And I want to kind of name one person on our board. Her name is Kim. She's our treasurer. And she does so much work behind the scenes, like collecting checks. At board meetings of ours, she comes with these nice, I don't even know how you call them in English, like overviews of how, how much Dāna has come in, how much we've offered also to guest teachers and what have you. And a few years ago, Kim just wrote me a note, an email. And this is what she said. She said, even though the larger amounts that are wonderful to receive when I open them as a treasurer, I love seeing the smaller amounts that are offered by the same people on a weekly basis. And then she goes, there's one particular member on our Sangha who always sends a simple but beautifully handwritten note each week with their $10 or $20 check. My grandma would say, it's the little things that matter. When that big red pickup truck allows you to go first. And then my teacher, Joseph Goldstein, he would often tell me, when you take good care of the Dharma, it will take good care of you. And I think taking good care of the Dharma manifests in many ways, but maybe the greatest gift of it all is your mindful presence. It's to pause, both in community, in your relationships, but also in the way you show up for yourself. And I think the gift of awareness also allows us to learn, especially from moments when we're not that generous. Again, to use that heavy word of the stain of stinginess is present in us. When is giving hard for you? Can you kind of access, just as a reflection for a moment, how that, when you are overcome by stinginess, what that's like? Not open-handed. And for me, I've been giving that some thought. And when I'm closed off, there's always a fear of not having enough in the future. That's one way of looking at it. Or sometimes I just don't have the energy to listen. Have you ever had this, like, not even a thank you? Oh, you've given something and you just realize my given was not unconditional. I wanted to thank you. Then the Buddha also said, be aware when you feel obligated to give. I think that's a really interesting thing to look at. Maybe also this week. When do you feel obligated to give? In the teaching, it said when you feel like I should give. And the Buddha said if you have to kind of convince yourself giving is good, or this is a family tradition, I need to do this. Does it sound familiar sometimes? But the cool thing is that the Buddha said even when you give, he said there is still some merit in sharing, but you just won't feel that delight when it comes from freedom of expectations or attachments or regrets afterwards. And so I really want to encourage you to see where that might happen. And for me, for example, it happens often when I'm listening to someone and I'm even nodding. But if I'm really honest, I'm not fully listening deeply. I'm already planning what I'm going to say next. Or I'm kind of listening and sometimes even maybe looking at my phone. So when you feel an obstacle to give, very often we're also very self-conscious. The sense of I becomes really strong in these moments. I won't have enough. I don't have anything good to offer. Or I just don't want to. And that self-centeredness can also be strong in how we receive a gift. because generosity is also dependent on receiving. When we are the care receiver, the gift receiver, the attention receiver, whatever we receive. And I asked myself, am I good at receiving? In January, I was had the great opportunity to teach in Hong Kong, and I had one Saturday off, and I wandered around the city, and I ended up in a place where there was a lot of art and antiques for sale. And I loved it there. And then I was just strolling by myself, and all of a sudden I looked at a man who was on these very small carts was drawing. And I looked what he was doing. And as I wanted to go away, he goes, "Wait." And he gave what he drew to me. And he says, "For you." And I'm like, they're like, "Oh, thank you." And he drew like two boats. There's a lot of boats around Hong Kong. I said, "Thank you." But I already felt a little bit like, should I give him something? And then he said, "Wait, wait." And then he started drawing again. And in like 30 seconds, he had another drawing. And he said, "Wait, wait, wait." And then he drew another drawing and gave me three drawings. And I'm standing there like, what do I do? And I'll be honest with you, it came from both freely offered, but also deliberate, like, I should give this man something. How much? So I was going to give him some money. And then he looked at me and he goes, "No, no, 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 no. It's for you." And later on, I reflected on it like, how did I receive that gift? I was very self-conscious. I've actually framed them now in our living room. But it was kind of the same thing with the turtleneck from a seat where I was like, wow, what a gift. So really allow yourself to be mindful this week in how you're receiving a gift. And the Buddha also said sometimes you say no. The most famous example is when he said, if someone gives you their anger, it's like taking a burning coals in your hand. You don't have to do that. So giving, receiving. And I want to close by, I think, like a brilliant teaching that the Buddha came up with when he was asked, how do you give skillfully? And so he goes, a wise giver, someone with integrity, gives with a sense of conviction. That's the first one. It's like when you're not holding back, without doubt, wholeheartedly. And that made me think of a seat, and the smile on his face when he gave me that turtleneck. I felt there was complete conviction in that he wanted to give it to me. You can just check, in what areas is it easy for me to give with full conviction? When you want to listen to someone, or when this afternoon I'm going to go to a rally and support people, stand up for justice. That's the first one, to give with a sense of conviction. The second one is, he says, a person of integrity gives attentively. And that's what we've been talking about throughout, that you are mindful in this engaging, in this relational moment of giving and sharing. So that you can feel also the delight of your giving, but also being aware, what is the impact of my gift? Sometimes the impact might be very different from the intention. Maybe just look around, and I know some of you are listening to the recording after the fact, and some of you are on the phone. But what does it feel like to know that you are giving in this community right now? And I have some of you on, what's that called again? Speaker view? No, the other one, gallery view. And just feel that sense of community. You're giving something right now, attentively. So with conviction, with awareness or attentively. Then the Buddha said, a person of integrity gives the gifts in season. at the right time, to really know when is it appropriate to give my gift. For example, when you give advice, I'm so learning how to give advice to someone who's 12 years old. I often miss. Or when you have to speak up, or when you have to give critical feedback. What's the right time? And I think here, what the Buddha's talking about is a sense of restraint. Like Chantal is in our house the one who usually gets the presents, and I'm the one kind of wanting to give them earlier than needed. When is the right time to give a gift? And then the Buddha said, the fourth element, a person with integrity gives without adversely affecting oneself or others. That's really important too. That's what Jessica was talking about when we might be in the role of a lot of caregiving. We might overextend ourselves by giving too much. We might not have the energy or means to give as much as we want. That's painful to realize as well. But we can also make others really uncomfortable if we give too much. I was picking up Lou from school this week, and he was hanging out with his friends, and maybe I shouldn't have hung out with them too as the old dad. But all of a sudden, Lou was like telling me, Papa, in Dutch, you're speaking too many words. It's fine. And then the last element of skillful giving, give with a kind heart. That at least you not know how it's going to impact the other, but that you know it comes from a place of kindness and goodness. So to give a gift with conviction, attentively, in season, without harming yourself or the others, and with kindness. And in that way, the legacy continues through our gifts. And so I hope that this reflection today will hopefully do the homework a little bit of receiving and allowing, maybe bringing generosity into your practice as a recollection. And also keep noticing the results of sharing and giving and receiving. I just want to close before opening it up to your reflections with the Buddha's words. He said that, so when the world is on fire with aging and death, one should rescue one's wealth by giving. What's given is well rescued. What's given bears fruit as pleasure, and what isn't giving does not. Eventually, thieves might take it away, or kings, or it gets burned or lost. What's given is well rescued. So I really want to thank you for receiving your kind and generous listening. And I would love to hear from you through the chat. How have you been touched by this cycle of receiving and giving? Maybe even talk about when it's hard to give, or what you might have rescued because of your giving. Just some suggestions, but all your reflections are welcome, and Jessica and I are happy to share them with you.
And our chat has been quite lively today, so we have lots to explore together. And I will start with what Karsten just shared, because there's an important question in his comment. So he says, reflection on feeling obligated to give.
Mm.
Sometimes I can see a situation that requires something or a person who needs help, but at that moment, I do not have a feeling that impels me to give. Still, I give because I'm aware that I ought to give. Is that a problem? I think it would be more of a problem if I do not give until the feeling arises.
Oh, yeah. I hear you, Carsten. And I've been in that position where I had the intention to give. I mean, the intention was not there, but I felt like I should. And I could have, but I didn't. And then to just reflect on that later on and to feel that sense of disconnect very often. And again, it does not have to be giving in terms of like material stuff, but most of the times it's about our attention or our time. And I think, what I loved about when the Buddha is saying, like, be aware of when you feel that ought to or should do, he said there's still much more merit in giving than not giving at all. And so I think that's not a problem at all. But it's worthwhile exploring what is holding you back a little bit, Karsten. What's that like? Yeah. Thank you.
We have another wonderful question here that Janet just shared. So she said, last year was very challenging for me with many losses. I was very grateful for a good friend who was generous with her support until she resented me for it and our friendship ended. How do you deal with people who give with strings?
Yeah, I hear you. The first thing that comes to mind, Janet, is I don't know. I think it's helpful to just pause with that whole experience and just allow that maybe that sense of grief over losing a friend, maybe also a sense of judgment, that self-judgment. Have I not seen this coming, or did I interpret that in a very different way? But if you feel like you're dealing with people that give with strings, I would go back to what the Buddha said also about when people give you their anger. Maybe it's better to not accept it. And also just to be kind to yourself, also just by you sharing this in the group, but also being kind with the self-judgment. I just see that you've responded, Janet, that the judgment was there too, and it was huge. And sometimes we just didn't see that coming. And it's painful because I think the opposite of generosity is that not just that sense of stinginess, but it's like it very much creates an us and them. And then we're not connected anymore. And so maybe also just taking your time dealing with the loss of a friend. Thank you for sharing, dear Janet. I'm just reading through a lot of these beautiful reflections, and I'll read this one from Lisa. From Lisa. Recently went out to eat with a friend. At the end of the meal, the waiter came to us and said, "Your meals have been paid for, including the tip." And we called the man over to our table to thank him. And I went back to the restaurant several times, but never saw this man again. Yes, I was hoping to have my meal paid for again and deeply appreciated his generosity. I love your honesty, Lisa, because it also really feels good when people are generous with us. It really feels good. And I think it's, in a weird way, it's a gift to them if we are willing to receive their generosity. That's like this cycle. I could not say no to that turtleneck to a seed, even if I wanted to, because I knew it meant so much for him to give it to me. And I also, just honestly, like you, Lissa, I love it when people are generous with me. I think that's what that's 106-year-old man was saying. Like, maybe the point of this human life is to make others happy or their lives a little more bearable. Thank you, Lissa. And this one came in from Julie. My dad, who has been my rock throughout my life, was diagnosed with dementia this week. It's scary. I've been looking forward to this Sacred Sunday pause this week as a space to receive the generosity of Bart, Jessica, and the community as it brings me relief and equanimity. Thank you all. I just want to also just pausing for you, Julie, and maybe as a whole community. It is really hard when the truth of impermanence really knocks on our door. And thank you for sharing this with the community. And may you and your dad hold this with ease and the rest of the family. And I hope that what you received is soothing. Leah and Chris wrote, sometimes I hold back on an impulse to give out of concern that it will feel excessive or needing to be reciprocated by the other. Is giving ever unskillful? I think it can be unskillful when it is harmful to yourself or others. I've when I teach meditation retreats, the ones who often talk to me about feeling overwhelmed by how much they were giving are people who work in hospitals or caretakers. And sometimes we have to reflect for ourselves. And usually that can happen with the support of awareness and some silence to maybe realize that you've been on maybe too much, that it's been excessive how much you've given. I think it's also a worthwhile contemplation to reflect, how am I generous to myself? And I think there, even just in your meditation practice, the act of pausing to remember to be present, and maybe just drop those two words if they feel helpful. Receive and allow. It might be such a great gift. And in the Buddhist teachings, he said that there was this young woman, she was training to be an acrobat. And she wisely said to her teacher, she said, I don't want to start by taking care of you first when we're both on a pole trying to keep our balance. I'll take care of myself first. And because of that, I will also take care of you. So you're just checking in. When your giving might feel, as Leah and Chris were saying, unskillful. Cheryl's asking, is generosity considered the first and foundational parami? Yes, it is. And also when the Buddha would talk about development of mind, he never started with mindfulness. Mindfulness was the last. So when you really want to cultivate your mind, start with generosity and virtue that are the first two paramis. Then also listen and understand the teachings, and then start practicing. And perhaps we want to close There's so many beautiful. I hope you can read for those of you who can. This one is from Mariana. She said, lately it's been hard to be generous to myself. I receive so much generosity from my body moment to moment, yet the last couple of weeks I've been sick, and it's been hard for me to be generous with the rest of my body needing to recover. I keep pushing lightly, but still pushing. I'm so grateful that you bring that in because it's easy to be grateful to your body when it's in relative health. But what I found so super helpful when my body is in pain is to go, it doesn't lie to me. The body is generous in its honesty, even when it's sick. And so notice the pushing, but also see if there's ways how you can still be generous in another way that you might not have done. And for me, that often means doing less. I don't want to, but to just give my body more rest, specifically the parts that it might have been straining. It is a gift to yourself. And unfortunately, we have to close. It's almost 12, and I wasn't sure if Jessica is back. I did notice she fell off.
I have returned.
Oh,
I
you're
have
back.
returned.
Yay, so you
So
can close.
for the last couple moments, I got to just sit
Oh,
here and enjoy. You were on a roll.
oh my, thank you so much for all these comments. And I'll give it back to you because I want to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, continuing that, thank you all for sharing so generously in the comments. As Bart often says, we always read them through one by one. So even if we weren't able to share what you wrote for response from Bart, we will read them all. They will inform future teachings. And then also, since we have Vera with us next Sunday, we will be sure to share the chat with her so she
Yeah.
has that context for her teaching. So I will be very brief. I am resharing in the chat information about some upcoming gatherings. So it's a combination of our next online practices. So we will be online for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We're online for a while. We also have an in-person insight dialogue practice on April 30th. So for those of you local to NYC, there's information in the chat about how you can register. And we have also, as of today, put the June 6th retreat on the website. And I've included that link also. So if you can join us for a day of practice, we gather from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Tibet House. And so that will be our plan for June 6th. It's always a joy to see you in person. And we have two very generous volunteers who help us with editing and uploading all
Yeah.
of our teachings to SoundCloud. Usually that's done by the afternoon. Sometimes it takes a day or so. So I know we had some technical issues the last time, so there might have been a bit of a lag. But for those of you who are looking for the recording, it is available on our website. You'll see a teaching archive tab at the top, and you can go there for access to many past teachings. So we will open up breakout rooms in just a moment. So we have 15 extra minutes for you to continue to be in reflection and sharing with each other. But Bart, before we do that, if you have any final words, and also if you could offer our dedication of merit for our practice.
Gladly. Just want to pause for a moment, receiving, allowing. May our time and reflection together be a cause and a great, great condition for interconnectedness and peace on this blue planet. inner peace within ourselves, connection and peace in our relationships, and in our communities. And may we all continue to be in that cycle of giving and receiving with delight and lots of joy. May there be peace. May there be peace. May all beings be liberated. Thank you. We usually have a bell, but maybe. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Jessica.